what happens as we age is those interests can be killed. You know, we can think of our interests as these, you know, tiny sparks or tiny flames. And if you feed that flame, that interest grows. As your proficiency in something gets better, your interest in it grows. Finding purpose for men in a sick and twisted society. Many men are aware today that our society is in a deep form of regression. And this regression can be attributed to a number of factors. Many of those factors completely outside the control of most men alive today, and especially those that are born into this society. The prevalence of social media, the questioning of traditional gender roles, and the abolition of traditional gender roles. Also, the creation of society that requires, for most people, a two-income household is tearing the fabric of our society. If we look at the fabric of a society, it all begins in the family. When the family degrades, society degrades with it. There are numerous statistics on the effects of single parent households on children, and especially single mother households. And this isn't a slight against mothers. It is just a well-known fact and an established fact that children without a strong father figure present in their life do far worse in every aspect of life. So how do we as men, young men, maybe middle-aged men, find purpose in this kind of society? Now, maybe you have a regular job that is unfulfilling in a lot of ways. For the vast majority of people, their work is a means to an end, and it's only a means to make money. Maybe you have very little connection with the community around you. Maybe you spend most of your time online watching videos, playing games, or wasting your time chasing e-girls on CoomTube and other sites of that nature. So how do you find purpose, and what is the purpose? Is there a point to being a man if it seems that society at large has rejected masculinity and rejected the traditional value that men bring to the table? I would argue there is. For every man that's alive right now that is in a state of suffering, I believe that the world goes through these major shifts, major paradigm shifts. The last 10 years have been tumultuous, but I would say the last 3-4 years have been especially tumultuous. There's this feeling that I've heard other people state, this feeling of that something big is on the horizon, this kind of impending doom, the future doesn't seem to be this potential bearing, hopeful place, but it seems to have this element of dread in it. And it's something almost intangible, but it's something that I think many of us feel on an intuitive level. And I've had this feeling for quite a while. So what do we as men need to do to be able to live and thrive through that future? I think one of the most important things that you can do as a man is to always be expanding your skill set, your competence. And now, typically, when people think of competence or skill sets, they place an economic value. And of course, there's an associated economic value with every skill, but you can look at skills in terms of basic survival. Because at its core, if there was a cataclysmic event, and that's not to say that that's going to be the end of the world, survival is the most important thing when society is faced with that type of an event. Skills around building fires, building things in general, making things, fixing things, being able to grow food, all the skills that are the basic building blocks of life and of civilization. I think for men, there's nothing more important than to always have the mindset that the Walmart is not always going to be there. You're not always going to have a grocery store. Maybe you will, but still you should be in the mindset that if those things didn't exist, that you would still be able to find a way. If you don't feel like that, if you feel completely tied down to every aspect of civil and modern society, completely dependent on it, then you're not competent in the basics of just surviving. Now, of course, if there was some sort of cataclysmic event, of course we would have access to certain things, but the point is, maybe you might not have access to everything as you once did. Now, I'm originally from Russia, and my parents lived in the Soviet Union. And in the Soviet Union, it was a cultural norm to know how to fix everything you had in your house, because you couldn't rely on the government or on society at large that there would be a new one for you to buy. So people knew how to fix everything. People knew how to make everything themselves. And there was this very deeply ingrained culture of self-reliance. And I believe some of that was passed down to me because I've always liked to know how something works, how I can fix it. If I own it, I want to know how I can fix it. And if I can fix it, I will fix it. This is, I would say, the number one trait as a man that makes you valuable. And so maybe you feel completely thrown away. I've read some letters from men that say, basically, I'm not interested in anything. I don't do anything. I have no friends. And there's nothing I really love. Well, the thing is that once upon a time, you probably did love something. You probably did have a deep interest. But what happens as we age is those interests can be killed. You know, we can think of our interests as these tiny sparks or tiny flames. And if you feed that flame, that interest grows. As your proficiency in something gets better, your interest in it grows. You rarely find that as you get worse in something, you get more interested in it. It doesn't work like that. And so if you find yourself as a man with no interests, no real passion for anything, I would challenge you to just start learning and taking on new subjects, maybe ones that once upon a time you had some spark of interest in, and see if you can get more proficient. See if you can start getting better at something. That feedback loop will grow your passion. It's very, very difficult for passion to just fall out of the sky in your lap and for you to just be motivated simply by virtue of how awesome that thing is, or like something that's going on inside you. No, it doesn't work that way. And so if you've fallen into this apathetic state, this complete kind of hopelessness, you look out at the world and you think to yourself, it's just clown world. There's no hope in relationships. I don't really see any type of future in a career. I'm not really doing anything that I consider as meaningful. You have to go back to the basics to find that purpose. And I think there's also this mythology around purpose as if there is one singular purpose. I think the purpose of life for a man should be to be useful to those around them. If you are useful, if you have skills, if you're competent, if you're helpful, you immediately become more useful to society and to those that are around you. If you think to yourself, well, there's no one around me, this is where community comes in. And community can be found in a church, it can be found through meetup groups. There's a number of avenues that are still working in the year 2023 to find community. Although it might be harder, community isn't completely dead. and it's never going to completely die. I would say just avoid the trap of the social media communities, because they are a shallow form of validation for most people. For men, they fall into the trap of more of the coom tube, and for women they fall into the trap of the social media validation, because it's distant, it's constant, and typically it's almost always positive. Whereas if you're involved in a real community, there isn't this 100% positivity. It's this, getting to know people, putting yourself out there a little bit, putting some effort in. It's not this constant just hit of dopamine that you get from likes, comments, and shares, or that you get from getting off on CoomTube. It's life, and life can seem boring when you've been inundated with this overstimulation in the digital realm, and it can seem more threatening. You notice this in the younger generations, where now it's kind of weird to just call people. You have to text people before you call. I think that's the strangest thing. I might not be that old, but I still, if I can, I like to call people. Sure, there's stuff that text is convenient for, but I also like just picking up the phone and calling people and not giving them a warning text. Is it okay if I call you right now? I think that's the one of the strangest things that is happening in our society, is that just the regular interactions that we as humans would have are now becoming strange. Everything has to be hidden behind this safety wall of text, of digital communication. Reject that, start learning some skills, and if you feel completely unmotivated, just force yourself. This is one of those things where you're living, you're breathing. You can do anything for 10 minutes, and you can do anything for an hour. And if you can do it one day, you can do it the next day. And if there is this impending catastrophe, you won't be taken back. You won't be shocked. You won't be panicked. I don't think anyone can be ready, because it could be a number of things. It could be World War III. It could be another, pandemic lockdown. It could be climate lockdowns. It could be just a host of things. It could be economic collapse. No one knows exactly what's coming down the pipe. The best thing that you can do is make yourself useful, make yourself proficient, skilled in something other than World of Warcraft or Minecraft or Halo or whatever other, I don't even know what games people play these days, but stop playing the video games and break out the book.